Alright, to recap, last week, Nicholas revealed much of the inner workings of the Mercers, their highest ranking officers forming a council and headed by a kind of director, master cleric by the name of Slade. Although one parcel remained supernaturally encrypted and defied being read. He met with Cornelius, and the two of them traveled to Lincoln in search of aid, perhaps contacts. Meanwhile, Robert remained in Chester to socialize with the kine and the Canaanites of a diminished Chester court. And while there, met with his world-traveling sire and his newest child, Robert's new sister in blood, Matilda. In a brief bit of Toreador rivalry, Robert trounced his new sibling by upstaging and outshining her at the impromptu tavern performance. Elined met with Mordecai in London and learned that a decision had come from the Covenant Council of the remaining counselors, excluding Barbaros. The 6 were evenly split between peace with the Anarchs, as right now only Ambrose and a precious few know of the allegations against Prince Sebastian. Elined then had a tense meeting with Ragna, trying to plead her case against the Mercers, but unable to draw on any goodwill or pragmatic benefit of waging war against the Mercers, and Ragna refused. And finally, Judith attempted to bolster her contacts and investments in Birmingham as she awaited word. And finally, riding out to the barony of Shenley Green, she made it almost 2 miles out when set upon by cloaked riders, whom immediately began their assault. And it is at that scene which we pick up now. As we open up back to Judith and see her on the other side of the bridge. Judith, you are on the north side of a large stone bridge over a deep and rushing river. Further north of you is a steep hill where the road continues on. To the west and east, the river rages about 30 feet across, with whitewater rapids going off to your east. There is a fairly dense forest following the river in both directions. Your horse Brago has been spooked and took off after having javelins thrown at him. And now there are 4 mounted and 1 dismounted mercenaries around you. The 3 behind you, 1 is still trying to get out from under his felled horse, looking somewhat injured. And the 2 ahead of you are riding down from the stone bridge. You have the first action. What do?
Judith is going to attempt to cleave one of the riders off his horse at least, if not in half.
Alright. All attacks against mounted opponents from foot without anything like a spear or a pike are going to be at higher difficulty. So you're going to be at difficulty 7 for a regular attack.
Out of curiosity for future note, the javelins they threw at me that didn't penetrate and I soaked, they're on the ground nearby, yeah?
One of them pierced you through the side, doing virtually no damage, and it is somewhere behind you. You're not sure in what condition yet.
Okay. Just figured I'd get some spatial awareness handled right quick.
Mm-hmm.
That may come up later. Well, that's a dumb question. The answer is probably no, but I'll ask anyway. Is there any way I can, since I have kind of high fortitude, can I brace for the charge using my sword kind of like a spear?
I'm going to say you can try this maneuver. It is not going to work very well. Best case scenario, you hurt the horse while you get trampled horribly.
Yeah, I figured it was worth a shot. Yeah. We'll give her a shot. You said it was increased by how much? The difficulty?
Difficulty is going to be 7 for trying to attack a mounted combatant while you're on foot. And just to confirm, this is to swing at him?
Right.
Okay, yeah. Alright, it is going to connect. And I'm going to say you're aiming at Rider 1. I have them kind of listed here.
Sure.
These first two being the ones closest riding at you. Alright, 6 lethal. Soaked 4, so he nets 2 lethal. Alright, describe Judith as she gets a good solid cut into this rider, but find that his armor, maybe his body itself, is just not cutting the way it should. Not finding purchase.
So as the riders bear down on her, she does take note that neither of them specifically attacked her, in spite of, well, so far as she notices anyway. But she wheels on a heel and brings her sword smack into the chest of the first rider.
A blow that should have been more devastating, but cuts only slightly. He's going to be getting an attack on you at the same time as he rides by. He's having an easier time attacking an infantry. You soaked 5 against his 4, so you managed to withstand this pretty severe blow from a cavalry rider as he comes by with his saber, and he cleaves into you, and between the javelin and the saber, you are starting to take damage on your clothes, at least. There's clearly blood drawn, but you're not actually hurt from this attack. And you can also see now that they're much closer, by the light of the moon, they're not just hooded riders, they seem to be wearing kind of cloths around their face. You can't even see their eyes. The second of these riders is also going to get an attack, unless you want to say something.
Whatever they're paying you, I'll double it.
You don't get any response, although this is happening in moments as both of these riders are coming up to attack. This is the second of their swings. soak. Alright. The second rider who comes by just as you finish swinging at this first rider and starting to cut into him, both of them come by. One of them does almost nothing, but the second one cuts you in the back, cutting at your spine, dealing 2 lethal, even after your fortitude. The third rider, one had already passed you, looks like they're going to try and trample you. So I'm going to roll his ride. Alright, this is going to hurt, but it's going to be bashing. Alright, 6 bashing on the trample.
I'm going to spend the blood to soak the first,
Okay.
fortitude amount.
Alright, what's your fortitude at?
4.
Okay. So you can roll your regular stamina. You'll be soaking at least 4 of this. Alright. Between imbuing your body with power, you're able to withstand the brunt of this damage. I just need you to roll a dexterity athletics to not be knocked down. Difficulty here is going to be 8 because he runs right through you. Any regular man would be dead.
Would lightning reflexes apply?
Yes.
You said diff 8?
Yes. This isn't to dodge it, more to just stay on your feet. Alright, 1 success. So this horse comes barreling through you and connects, a trample that should have just crushed you. But despite everything, you roll with it, and at the end of it, you manage to roll back onto your feet by the end of it. An impressive feat, clearly supernatural by anyone watching. No one should have been able to do that. Last one will be trying the same. They seem to be just hitting you one after another, giving you no time to catch your breath, so to speak. Alright, this is going to trample also. And roll your soak.
Well, I want to see how much I need to soak first before I... Yeah, we can do that.
3. Alright, you're going to withstand this as well. It is just bashing damage, and this one doesn't hit you quite as directly, but I am going to need another dexterity athletics. Still difficulty 8. Alright, much more adroitly this time, you manage to stay on your feet. But your cloak, your clothes are torn and covered in dirt, you're cut. They're making short work of everything you have on you, and they're relentless. The 5th rider is going to be spending his turn getting out from his dying horse.
So about this javelin.
Yes. It is your
Is it
turn.
within Was it within reach, and is it in a shape to be used?
Because you stayed on your feet and you didn't get knocked around too badly, despite all the attacks, it is pretty close to where you are. Roll a 1d10. Let's see if all these riders didn't crush it under the galloping. Okay. Yes, fortunately, it does appear to be mostly intact. Somehow none of these riders managed to crush it after riding through, slashing and trampling you. You do see it pierced into the ground.
So I want to throw this thing at the nearest rider.
Alright, that's going to be the lead rider again, who's already a little bit hurt. If you want to pick that up, you can take it in an action and throw it in one turn. You get dexterity. I guess throwing is still strength, so strength, athletics, difficulty 7. It is a +2 damage weapon. Alright, it's gonna connect. Roll damage.
Sadly, I can't count those 10s.
No, it'll be a well-placed shot, though. You make a very well-thrown attack that would kill a man outright. But these are not regular men, you're finding out very quickly. Describe Judith in this moment. You end up dealing 2 lethal after everything's said and done.
Judith's cloak fans out behind her as she spins and pirouettes across the bridge, snatching up the javelin in a smooth motion. And just as smoothly when she comes around again, she lets fly, catching the lead rider squarely in the shoulder.
Alright, I'm gonna see if he can maintain control of his horse and not get fallen off or thrown off.
And he's down dice too.
Yes, he is. One success. So he catches this in the shoulder, taking 2 more lethal. Which puts him now at 4. And he barely manages to hold on. You can hear him yell, and you can see the silhouette of his cloaked figure pull back and almost fall off the horse as he kind of slides to one side and leans up on the horse's neck. So he's now at 4 lethal. He's coming in to attack you again. Although now at penalty. Alright, this will connect. Roll your soak. Okay, you're gonna soak all of this. The attack is not as expert. You can tell the wound is affecting him. The strike is solid, but you're more sturdy. Still, the cuts are adding up. And you're absolutely covered in slashes now.
Boys, come now. 5 of you against a lone female. And they say chivalry's dead.
Silencia, witch! Hear this called out from the next rider who's riding by. The next 2 riders, I'm gonna roll in sequence, just so it doesn't take too long going through this. So I'm gonna roll both of their attacks separately. You'll get a chance to soak both. Connect. Alright, roll your soak twice. 3 and 2 lethal respectively. You soaked both of them. So again, one after another, they're all slashing at you. You're able to withstand much of it. This one's going to try and trample again. Alright, soak again. It's not much. You're still able to soak. Only another athletics roll to stay on your feet. Okay. You're managing to hold your own against these riders for much longer than a lone woman on ground should be able to. Rider 5, the last one, has gotten up from his horse, who has definitely been felled. You see he's withdrawn his saber like the others, although obviously wounded from being collapsed by a horse. He's making his way over to you, but he won't be there this turn. What is Judith doing at this time?
Dread gaze.
On who?
The crowd.
Can you use that on an entire group?
I thought you could.
I feel like that's more of a glory or a majesty level power to subdue an entire group. You can try it on one, certainly.
I feel like that'd be a waste, because then I'm wide open to the other 4. So let's see how I do with split actions, because I'm tired of just being a punching bag for these guys.
You're not sure how long you can hold out.
Here's the deal, boys. I'm bored of this. So either tell me what you want, or I'm going to stop being friendly.
You could try a charisma expression, difficulty 9. Get their attention. Stop them from battle briefly.
Can I get manipulation expression?
Sure, I'll allow that.
Especially given I have a specialty in persuasive.
Zero
Which
successes.
doesn't matter.
You hear one call out to the other as they're all constantly riding around you, kind of in turns as they take turns riding in to trample or slash at you. But you hear the calls. Do not listen to her. She will curse you. Avoid the eyes.
So I'm going full parry, full defense.
Okay. You will still be at difficulty 7. Defending against cavalry on the ground is very tough.
But it means that if I overpower their blow, I get damage on them.
Only if you trample them.
What?
They're not attacking with their hands.
I mean, they're attacking with blades. Like,
Yeah, what you're thinking of is if someone attacks you with a hand or a claw or a mouth, what you end up netting in success damages, but sword against sword doesn't hurt them. Unless you want to riposte, which is even harder to do against cavalry. Right now I'm assuming straight parry.
straight parry for now.
Okay. Difficulty 7 then.
We'll see if a riposte becomes an option as things happen, but for right now. I'm going to go ahead and push blood to Dex as well.
Alright. Alright, this is going to connect pretty well. Well, we'll see. You can parry. You can try to parry that. I shouldn't jump the gun here.
Net of 3.
Okay. Alright, soak. Yeah, you soak it. Your body's too sturdy for their blades to pierce, they're finding. That's going to give them pause and me as I think about how they react to that. Meanwhile, what is Judith thinking right now as far as what to do and what's going through her mind?
Judith's trying to reason out who sent them. They're obviously not sent by the Covenant. That much is clear. Covenant princes like to tout their involvement. There'd be surcoats or banners or something involved. So clearly they've been hired by the Mercers or some third party she's not aware of.
Alright. You hear more of the men call out as they ride around and seem to be getting into position for something. One after another, they're not having success striking you one at a time.
What's up with the downed horse?
Looking briefly, you see that there is a horse not extremely far away, maybe a short jog. It's cut wide open and bleeding out pretty badly, and its rider has gotten up, is limping towards you, and will be at you very soon, imminently in fact.
I'd have to get past him to get to it. I'm just going to try and hit him with the horse.
That horse isn't going anywhere soon.
Well, I mean, Potence. Potence does wonders for moving a horse.
Oh, I thought you meant getting the horse up.
Oh no, well I mean it would be up. But it would be thrown. The railing of this bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Is it wood or stone?
It appears to be, I'm gonna say wood. So stone base with wood railings.
Could I rip the railing free and then use it to, like, clothesline all four horses as they come in?
You could attempt to.
Like, I feel like if I hit the lead horse, then it's really down to a dodge for the other three. Or a ride roll, what have you. Ooh. What about clotheslining the riders?
Like I
feel like that'd be more difficult, but yeah.
You can try, but to reset the scene, so you're at one end of the bridge, and at this point, the riders are positioning that this downed rider is obviously on the north side with you, and then one of them has gotten back onto the bridge through one of these pass-bys, and it appears like more than one of them is about to charge you at once now, but not necessarily from the same side.
So there's...
You're about to be pincered.
Okay, so they're on either side.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to try and time this so that they kind of... Well, ideally they're not stupid enough to ride directly at each other.
It's not clear what they're going to do yet, but you do hear call-outs and signals with raising of these sabers in the air in a circular motion. Some kind of sign is being given.
So she's going to rip the railing off and prepare for what's about to happen.
You can at your turn.
Fair enough.
But meanwhile, this is going to happen. And you are still in
full defense,
full
yeah.
defense mode, so yeah. So you still get your benefit of parrying. So roll your parry.
Wait, that's 2 guys? Do I get 2 parries for that?
You will not, as they are riding at the same time, and they're striking at the same time. This seems to
Total
be
is 6.
Alright, so they netted a success on this, despite their coordination. Roll soak. A lot of dice get 2 successes. Despite their coordination, you don't take any damage from this either. Although you feel like if it was better placed, it could have done a lot worse. So in a very coordinated motion, these riders don't strike you in sequence, they strike you at the same time, slashing at you, although you're defending well enough that the hits aren't as effective as it should have been. Four is going to hold his turn, and 5 is now at you. Although he's wounded as well. So he has a saber, but it looks like he's not going to attack you with his blade. So he tries to sweep you with his leg.
Can I still parry that?
Yes, you're on full defense, so you can parry. One success. This is going to hit you. It's not going to hurt very much, but it is going to knock you down.
Well, it's going to try to knock you down. So 3 bashing. Oof.
So yeah, 1 success. So 2 bashing ends up being only 1 because you're vampire, so only take 1. But it is going to knock you down. So you're now on the ground. You can spend the action getting up, or you can try dexterity athletics to get up and do something. And have a turn.
What's my diff?
The difficulty under these circumstances is going to be 8. will get up in time. You can still act this turn.
I'm about to fuck this dude up.
Alright, 3 successes on a slash.
Lightning reflexes apply or no?
I'm not going to give it to you for every melee attack.
No, that's fair. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, can't do that. He's not soaking anything. He's down for the count with 6 lethal and 3 bashing. In 1 strike, you bring him down, cutting well through his armor and whatever supernatural defenses he seems to have. Go ahead and describe Judith, handedly taking out at least one of these riders.
Judith snarls and splits the footman squarely in half. He might live if he's Canite, but he won't be going anywhere anytime soon. And then she wheels to look at the other 4 riders. I did warn you.
You get no response from their expressionless masked faces. The silence of the night seems only to steal their resolve in the sight of their dead comrade. You hear another chant go out, another call, as the one who rode from the north side across the bridge now seems to be doing another maneuver. If they can't cut you down one by one, they might as a team. Rider 1, it's penalty of 1. As a reminder, you also have a penalty now.
Yeah.
Soak. This one is gonna hurt. Alright, 3 lethal. And now at 5 lethal and 1 bashing, leaving you crippled. So this strike is much more ferocious than the previous one, as you see what these mercenaries can do with their training. As both of them cut through you just after you finish downing their friend and yell at them, their response is to almost cut you in half as these riders come by, and again in that well-trained synchronized motion their sabers come down, and you aren't prepared enough to defend against this. You are at crippled, -5. You hear a rider call out that hasn't charged past you. Yield, witch. Yield or die.
Seems you're hell-bent on killing me either way. Give me a reason.
We get paid more if you are one piece when we bring you back.
By whom?
The man whom you can't really see, but who is speaking to you on the north side, raises his saber up to you. Yield.
To whom am I yielding? Or is battlefield courtesy no longer observed?
One of the others on the north side of the bridge yells to this man you're parleying with. I said listen not to her words. She will cast spell on you. Knock her down. We bring her body. Just as good.
You were lied to and underpaid. She'll reach into the folds of her cloak and drop her full purse directly on the bridge. Double that if you work for me.
Alright, at your current wound level, I'm gonna say that even standing right now is a challenge.
Can I throw stamina survival to see if I can heal during combat?
You can do that.
I can't remember for that rule. Does that still require the wound penalties?
Excellent question. Hasn't actually come up that I can recall. I'm gonna say it does. It is harder to mid-combat if you are at brink of death as opposed to barely hurt. It gets harder the worse off you are. Alright, one success. You can heal up to your generational limit. So how much is Judith healing?
Oh, all of it. But she's not going to let them know.
You have 5 lethal and 1 bashing. How much blood can you spend per turn?
3.
Okay. So you're
All that I can. Yeah.
Okay. So you're gonna heal 1 bashing and 2 lethal?
Well, I was just going to heal the 3 worst.
It goes in order of least to worst, so aggravated is the last you're gonna heal, lethal being the middle.
Right, I was healing crippled, mauled, and wounded levels.
But as far as severity, you'll take the bashing off first. So you have, after this, 3 lethal.
Okay.
But that seems to be enough time for these men to stop deliberating, since you keep talking and The amount of money you've thrown out seems not to have even gotten any of their attention. 3 and 4 do not have any penalties.
She's going to offer up her hands.
To try and stop them?
Well, no, to put her wrists together.
I'm not following.
She's making like she's going to yield.
Okay. Now, is Judith deceiving them for enough time to heal her wounds, or does she mean to actually yield?
Well, she's deceiving them to see if she can't bait them in close enough.
Okay.
To take her prisoner.
Alright, give me a manipulation performance, difficulty 8.
She's going to go ahead and spend the willpower on this too, because she likes not being dead.
Okay. One success with the willpower. The third and fourth rider, one of them coming up from behind, just start to gallop forward when they rear their horses up and you show your palms. And is your sword on the ground, I assume, then?
Point is in the bridge. So, yeah.
You left it on the bridge?
Well, she's on the bridge still. So it would be...
At the foot of it, at the end of it.
Okay, then it's point down, pommel up. Like, jabbed into the ground.
Okay. So these riders stop. They note that you're standing there with your palms up. Step away from your blade, woman.
Can I see his eyes at all?
You cannot.
If I remember correctly, that just increased the difficulty.
Yeah, he's pretty far away. You can make out where his head is because of the cloak, but his eyes are well concealed.
Come now, I'm scarcely dressed. You've cut my clothes nearly to ribbons. And she takes a half-hearted step away from the blade. Not completely out of arm's reach, but she's trying to sell it.
Mm-hmm. That seems to be the extent that they're willing to give you time to reconsider. As the call is made again, and both these riders come riding down, or rather one comes riding down from the bridge and the other one charges at you. They seem to no longer care that you're surrendering or believe you with one success. You've spent it.
Am I close enough to wrestle the one or both of the horses to the ground and make a kind of a roadblock?
On your next turn, you could try that. but we're still finishing this round. I do not believe you have the soak for 14 successes.
And I can't dodge out of the way.
If you spend a willpower, I will let you make a dodge. It will be difficult. Otherwise, you will be in torpor.
I'm spending the willpower.
Okay. You can make your dodge. Difficulty will be 8. They're coming at you from both sides, and this is at the very last second. Okay, lightning reflexes
Net
in
2.
place. So 2. I'm going to take 2 away from their damage, getting you down to 12 lethal.
I'm gonna go ahead and spend another blood to auto soak 4 of that.
Okay, that'll bring it down to 8. And a regular soak brings it down to 4 lethal.
Which puts me at 8 cap.
Alright, just enough to send you over, not quite into torpor. Well, technically torpor, I suppose.
Oh, definitely torpor.
Alright, thus ending combat. You are not destroyed, but this combat is certainly ended. As the mercenaries grow tired of your words, ride down and cut you down. And Judith falls into torpor. To what fate we have yet to see. And the scene will fade to black. That. As we transition to a different part of England. At around the same time. Meanwhile, Elined, you, I believe, are still in York. You had your meeting with Ragna, which did not go perhaps as you wanted. What is going through Elined's mind during this time, and what are her plans now? As I said, is around early June 1456.
Currently, she intends to make some traveling plans. Before she does so, she would like to see if she can run into their contact they haven't spoken to in quite a while.
Looking for Rothschild?
Aye.
Alright, making travel plans, hoping to run into Rothschild. Look over my notes. A roster for York. Do you do anything to try and get his attention, or you just hope against hope that you'll find this individual?
He was interested in poetry, or so it said last time, so she will do a few poetry performances at whatever pub she can.
And how long are you persisting at this? Hours, nights, weeks?
A few nights, perhaps, but there are more pressing matters, so she will not be tending to it for more than that.
I was just
A
curious.
week at absolute most.
Okay, I was curious what her intention was. It doesn't take you a week before something happens. It does take you a few nights going to taverns. I won't make you roll because you're quite practiced at this. And I believe you've had some success in the past, too.
Not at this specific city yet. In London, yes.
I might make you make a roll if you were going to hunt, but in this instance, your skills are enough that you draw a small crowd of interested people, the more academic or perhaps maybe literate, that are interested in the poetry you bring that they've not heard. And you're left a few coins here and there, paltry offerings. And maybe 3 or 4 nights in, you are leaving the tavern after maybe a couple hours of reading out poetry that you've had memorized, when you notice a figure in dim light further down the road in York. You're down this street that's mostly shops, and there are still people out and about, although this figure catches your attention as being somewhat lopsided and off to the side, a bit out of the way, but perhaps angled just such that you would take notice of them.
Then she will attempt to discreetly head over there.
This individual seems to take note that you're paying attention to them and opens the door to this building they were loitering at, and the light of the ensconced torch that dimly lit the passageway briefly shows a horrifically disfigured face passing into the domicile. The door's left open for you.
She will indeed go in. Was said disfigured face a familiar-looking one?
It was. It does seem like you have run into the prior Rothschild.
All right, then she will close the door behind her so they are not overheard.
Inside is a meager home. There's not much here. It's a 2-story building, but there's little more on this first floor than old wooden floors, very weak and flimsy, unbalanced wooden table with a couple slices of bread and a knife. There's a hearth, but there's no fire. There's really only a candle light in this room, all the better to hide his figure. I thought it was you who was, in poetry. Perhaps missed.
That is how I was told to contact you last time, I believe.
And thus you have, my dear. For what purpose, I wonder?
That information you gave us last time of the corruption. We know from whom it is coming, and there are currently works underway to, deal with that problem.
We had begun to think that we were also close upon uncovering a source. It is fortunate that you should come now. I had begun to fear you had forgotten.
However, we have run into a bit of a problem.
What is that, mynheer?
The princes are tied in vote and refuse to march on the perpetrator. The only way to get this vote to go the other way is to either convince them or get the proper information needed to my ally, who is supposed to be trying to convince Barbaros.
So all Covenant leaders seem to be aware of your target. And whom is this?
Target himself?
Yes.
The perpetrator of the corruption is Basileus, the individual in the Tower of Thorn.
Yes, Basileus. We had heard a similar name as well. It seems perhaps you have more information than we do now, my dear.
Indeed. And I have information that could potentially sway Barbaros to voting in favor of marching against him. However, due to my recent actions, I am not exactly welcome there.
No, that makes two of us. Kind of shifts.
Indeed. Do you know anyone that would be able to deliver a message discreetly to one of my compatriots that I am uncertain if he's there currently, but I remember he mentioned he would try to convince Barbara.
I can think of some who would be of aid. Only few whom I trust enough. What is this parcel of information?
The Anarchs are talking about returning the ship that Barbaros unfortunately lost to them. Should he agree to, well, should the princes as a whole agree to this marching on the Tower of Thorns. Though with how paranoid Barbaros is lately, he could very well see it as another trap.
And just to clarify, the council isn't aware of Sebastian or much of the specifics.
She hasn't mentioned Sebastian at all.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Just Basileus.
Mm-hmm. And their vote technically was on peace, or at least armistice, with the Anarchs.
Mm-hmm.
But I assume that kind of rolls into your explanation here.
Yep. Because peace with the Anarchs is also tied with aiding and taking down this Basileus.
And this information, if Barbaros is informed that his precious warship might be returned to him, you believe this would sway his vote? Peace with the Anarchs and a march on the Tower of Talons?
Potentially, yes. Right now, it's the only option I can think of, barring trying to convince some rather strong-minded individuals. I attempted to convince Ragnar. Apparently, I am not nearly eloquent enough to do so.
Well, as I understand, she has always been quite self-serving. For as long as most have known her, if there is not some value for her to be gained, I am not surprised you found no purchase in your discussion.
Precisely. With how their rivalry is, the potential of getting his ship back, coupled with the fact that, well, Barbaros himself likes to do things counter to Ragnar, could potentially add another vote to the other side and let things move forward.
It is perhaps the best we have at this time. I would not trust myself to enter the court of Chester again.
Of course, that is why I asked if you knew anyone that would be able to do it.
Indeed, it may take me some nights. However, I believe this can be done. He nods a couple times, shaking a bit. Any other ideas, ways this might be facilitated?
Other ideas? Unfortunately, not at the moment.
It does seem you've made good progress on this investigation.
Yes. And said progress has also attracted attention. There are people poking around trying to find out exactly what all has been figured out by myself and my compatriot.
Oh, I must be very careful these nights.
Indeed.
This Basileus, we know so precious little about him.
And the information we got from the Anarchs also correlates with an interrogation we did on a mortal hunter that also led him to the same tower.
Know ye where this tower may be? Perhaps my contacts might be able to discreetly learn more.
It was in Norwick, right?
Correct.
It is in Norwick.
Ah. Sebastian's domain, under his very
Indeed.
nose. Had you not thought of perhaps allying yourself with Sebastian to root out this tower?
It would not muster the forces needed to take said tower.
Well, surely his knowledge would aid you. He knows much, I hear.
That is a potential option, but one I'm uncertain if I have the time to go toward. This alliance with the Anarchs, they want word back by August. We are on a very limited time scale.
Ah, August. They mean to attack, then, as we feared.
Unless peace is brought about and we go about the taking of the town. Getting an ally to go against a greater threat, if you will.
In truth, I am surprised they would speak with you at all. They're the vicious type as I understood it, except for a few here and there.
Yes, well, one of the more recent editions has a diplomatic sense about them.
One you trust?
Yes.
He kind of looks at you with incredulous, old, scarred and glazed over blue eyes. What gives you so much trust in this man?
Because in the past I have traveled with them.
Barbaros and Ragnar once traveled together. I expect little trust exists there now. I would caution you of that.
That is understandable, but from what I understand of my former companion, this is something they would not get around about.
I shall see about acquiring a trusted courier to bring your information to the Chester Court. How long will you remain in the city?
I intended to leave early next week.
Yes. It should not take me many nights to retrieve the courier. Do you wish this to be dispatched by letter?
No, letters can be intercepted.
This courier would not be intercepted, I assure you. Only those I trust most with such tasks would be allowed the information.
Very well. I will go about writing the letter for your courier then.
He nods a couple times as he steps around the table. I shall make it once to alert him. I will find you in some number of nights. Tread carefully, my dear.
As carefully as I can in these dangerous nights.
He kind of shuffles past you out the door.
She will go to the inn she's been staying at and start drafting up a letter.
Quarters are prepared for you at the Castle of York. Do you pointedly...
She would like to do this outside of Ragnar's view.
Gotcha. So you decline the quarters provided.
Yes, she does not wish to impose. Or so is her excuse.
Fair enough. All right. So you return to the streets, eventually finding your way back to the inn. Let's see here. All right, and you begin working on your inn. I mean, not your inn, your letter at the inn.
My inn. I have purchased this inn, didn't you know?
I mean, you have the money for it, but anyway. Is there anything else Elined wishes to work on in the, up to early next week, besides getting this letter off to the courier?
Making travel arrangements.
Where to?
Lincoln.
Lincoln.
She has a phase 2 should this talk go poorly.
Should the talk with the Anarchs with Judith go poorly?
No, she has a phase 2 should the matter with Barbaros go poorly.
Oh, I see. All right. Let's begin preparations to travel to Lincoln. And remind me, is Gertrude with you?
No.
Okay, that's what I remember. All right, so you begin working on that. And we'll check in with Robert. Robert, you are still in Chester. It's been only a night since your wonderful performance. And when you were pickpocketed, it was briefly alarming to you because that's all the coin you had on you. Since your impoverishment and loss of resources, it's been a little bit harder to keep traveling money on you, and that pickpocket got away with just about all of it, which would have made travel or lodgings much more difficult. Fortunately, you immediately solved that with your outstanding performance and made a good amount of silver from your tavern show. So effectively, you have as much as you need to travel around for now. What are Robert's plans now as you learn that Killian and Matilda intend to continue on? They intend to go to Bristol next. They seem to be making their loop all the way around south and probably going to depart eventually for back to France.
Was his sire keen on passing off the location of his estate?
His estate in France?
Yes.
He gives you some directions to a home in France. He says you can find him there, should you travel abroad.
Very good. How has Matilda taken the performance?
Make a perception empathy roll. Reflect how well you were able to read her. Standard difficulty. Alright. 3 successes. It's a little difficult at first to read her. She seems well practiced at hiding her emotions and being socially appropriate and polite, commending you on your skill and your obvious expertise and performance. But with netting 1 success, you detect a bitter poison in the back of her throat with every word.
Robert suspects he could feel the same way if he had lost out on the performance. He'll attempt to win her over, perhaps offer to share a meal with her or something.
Okay. And do you want to open a scene for that, or do you want to overview it and see how it goes?
Overview.
Okay. You can give me a charisma empathy roll, difficulty 7. Two successes. Alright, so you're fairly successful in starting to mend things with Matilda. She never truly admits to feeling bitter about it and tries to brush everything off and deflect. But as you seem to genuinely show grace in your victory and extend olive branch and feed with her, that does seem to help her with how she acts around you and loosening up a bit. And she makes an offhand comment somewhere in there about feeling silly for trying to compare herself to someone as superior as you.
That Robert will take the compliment and wish her and his sire well. Of course, extending an offer to assist her if she ever finds herself in these parts again. After all, he is her big brother now.
She kind of snickers at that and agrees to come find you one night in the future. And with that, they depart. You are left to your devices in Chester again.
I think the next thing to do is to gather up the entourage and head over to York.
Alright, and quite an entourage it's become, as there is your herd and your 2 ghouls. It does seem like Heather and Guy DeFree have become quite close, fortunately. And some of your herd seem to be a bit more enthusiastic ever since you remembered who Marie was. They all have hopes that you'll remember them next.
He'll start trying.
So, from Chester to York, let's see here. Okay. It's going to be approximately 150 miles, as you can't exactly take a path as the crow flies. It's kind of roundabout. You have to kind of head a little bit south and east and then back up north to York. So all in all, it'll take you about a fortnight. You'll arrive approximately midsummer, or mid-June. Let's see. Elined's leaving mid-June. So you're gonna probably cross paths right at the end. I think we will open a scene as the two of you cross paths briefly, just as Elined is preparing to leave and Robert arrives. So Elined, you're staying at one of the independent inns. You're not staying at the castle.
Hi. However, she has been doing quite a few poetry performances.
True. Alright. So Elined, it's on one of these last nights when you're preparing to leave and your belongings are packed up. And you hear word from one of Ragnar's ghoul attendants that Robert de Vere just presented himself in Castle York. And apparently is in the city for some time. I'll give you the chance to sneak away privately, or if you wish to seek him out, you have that option.
I do want to seek him out, but I also want to be a sneaky sneak about it.
Is Robert partaking of the always open offer to lodge at Castle York, which is much nicer than the inn and also free? With your resources, I would have you otherwise roll your resources to pay for travel and lodging here.
So it would cost at the inn, but free at the castle?
Yes, and the lodgings are nicer at the castle.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you're guarded. There are many benefits. Ragnar's made it very attractive.
How has his entrance to the city been? Has he been welcomed, or?
I'm assuming you mean by the Canite Court?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Are you thinking like in reaction to anything in particular?
Yeah, just kind of like has the mood changed since he was last here? Has he seen Dorothy and things like that?
You're gonna see Dorothy very soon. You haven't seen her yet, but you imagine it won't take very long. It's tough to gauge the mood immediately. This is kind of like a little bit late into the night that you arrive. So you don't yet quite know what the overall sentiment is here, at least as it regards to you in particular.
Alright, if he is unable to figure that out, he'll opt for the inn and perhaps even do a performance there to make a little bit more travel money.
Alright, first we're going to see if you have the coin to stay here between your traveling arrangements and putting up not just you, but your 2 ghouls and all of your herd, and all your belongings being stowed away. Have you make a resources roll, difficulty 7. Two successes. Wow, that's an excellent roll. 2 10s. You only had 2 dice, they were both 10s.
Lucky.
Okay. Yep, your tavern performance money is holding out quite well. You will be able to hold up your entire entourage in the inn, at least for now. So Elined, I'm going to say that actually you don't hear from a ghoul attendant that Robert has arrived in the city. It's one of the people that was helping you load up all of your belongings was distracted. You know, he took a while getting stuff in, and he ends up apologizing to you and makes an offhanded remark about this, you know, delightful performance going on in the tavern by this man who just brought this large entourage in and drew all this attention into the tavern or the inn you were just at.
She will go see what all the hubbub is about.
Robert, go ahead and give me a... Again, I'll let you go either way. Charisma performance or appearance performance.
He'll go with... Oh, what's the difficulty?
Standard.
Okay. He'll go with appearance.
Okay. Focusing especially on how good you look. Specialty, don't you have like unforgettable face?
He does.
Alright, 2 successes. So I'm gonna say like one of these, or maybe several of these individuals remember you from like a past performance, and they get a few other people interested, and although it wasn't gonna be that great of a performance, they remember you because of how good you looked. And it's mostly women in this crowd who seem to be very interested, and Elined, when you step in, you see a small crowd gathering around. And Robert, describe yourself as you put on a performance here in the Tavern of York, one of the taverns.
Well, he's obviously preening himself at the show he's putting on and the attention he's gathered. But he does genuinely seem happy to be interacting with people like this.
And Elined, also of note, he looks healthier and more normal than he has in past nights. The dark, sunken eyes and inhuman features seem to have receded.
Elined will wait until the performance is over. Interrupting it would just bring about too much attention to ourselves.
Alright. After maybe half an hour, it seems like most of the crowd is gone as Robert finishes talking to his modest fan
Does
base.
Robert notice Elined coming inside?
Oh, I was muted. Yes, after maybe half an hour, the crowd disperses as Robert finishes talking to his small fan base, mostly of women. And you see Elined through the crowd.
He'll glance towards Elined and give her a wink and excuse himself from the crowd.
The remaining women step away and thank you and say their goodnights to you as they disperse.
Robert will begin heading towards the quarters he rented and give kind of like a motion to Elined, so that's obvious.
Elined will come along. Well, she was gonna follow him either way, so.
Alright, and the inn that you're at is called the Golden Fleece, in case you were wondering. So you make your way down the hall, kind of around the barkeep, and towards this very modest room, very close to the entrance. Many of the other rooms have been taken up for your herd or Guy or Heather, and so this is the one you have. Inside, it's very modest. There is a window, but it's been doubly, shuttered and closed up to not let any light in. There's a very low-set bed with clean sheets and a pillow, little bedside table, the candle, and there's some bread on there that obviously no one's really gotten at. It's very barren here.
Robert will welcome Elined in.
Elined, well headed. We have quite a lot to catch up on.
That we do. Shall we start with business?
Business is the most pressing of matters, yes, though through business I have found out a matter that is rather personal to yourself.
By all means, you first.
More specifically, the group that killed your grandsire.
Robert's full attention it's just obvious now. Please, continue.
It was a group of Irish kindred from beyond the Pale. They were
Irish.
smuggled in by, well, said individual in the tower. Whose name, by the way, is Basileus. That's another tidbit of information garnered. So, yet more things point to that.
Irish kindred.
From beyond the Pale, yes. They were smuggled in by the underlings of this Basileus, this individual who resides in the towers resides in the tower, and, well, is the reason Anafit and Ted got so close to the princes.
Troubling.
Indeed.
Mercenaries it was then.
I believe they think of themselves as freedom fighters.
An odd target. What did they hope to achieve? Have you learned?
I believe they were merely striking out against the group that has... The Covenant does claim the Pale itself, does it not? They could be just striking at someone due to that, or they could have been directed by the person who smuggled them in. This is a lot of speculation. I only know where they came from and who brought them in.
Robert will search his mind about the Pale. What are the territory lines, the politics of that area?
The Pale is what can loosely be considered kind of anglicized Ireland, Dublin being the capital, and that's kind of like the extent of England's reach into Ireland right now. And so beyond the Pale is the rest of Ireland. And let me look at my notes, because I have a map here that's very helpful for this. Outside of that, it would be tough to say what Robert would know. Give me an intelligence politics roll, difficulty 8. This wouldn't really be his forte. I'm going to make it 9, actually. There's really no reason you would know much about Ireland unless you'd come from there or studied it purposefully. One success. Okay, you know a little bit more than just what's in the Pale. Beyond the Pale, you know vaguely that the Irish have their own kind of fiefdoms and kings, their own clans running things. And you know, one success, I'll say that you know that there is kind of this wilderness known as the Connacht in the far western Ireland, which is kind of like a no man's land. It's supposedly inhabited, but that's all you really know.
I see. Troublesome. As for more troublesome news, Prince Barbaros was not convinced.
Which is why I have more information that could convince him. Which, notably, was garnered through peace talks with the Anarchs.
Please continue.
Elined, which is to seek a truce and, well, a companion of ours, former companion rather, is the one being diplomat for the Anarchs.
So she is.
Indeed.
What timeline do we have on the talks?
They We wish to have a definite answer by August. Point being, what we found out is the individual spreading the corruption is this Basileus in that tower that was alluded to by your interrogation of the hunter. In exchange for that, in exchange for allying with the Anarchs to take down the greater threat, the Anarchs want Norwick, in which to instate their leader as prince.
Mm-hmm.
However, Judith hinted at the fact that it might be possible to return the Von Danzig from Anarch custody to that of to the Covenant princes. Whether it goes back to the rightful owner or not, yet to be determined. We could try to convince Barbaros with the promise of his warship returning.
It's possible.
Likewise, the princes convened and voted on it, and they were tied. Ragna herself voted against doing so. That also adds to Barbaros potentially going along with it, since his rival is doing the opposite.
Ragna does not seek peace with the Anarchs.
She does not see what is in it for her. And my talks with her have gone poorly. I am not very eloquent when it comes to diplomatic matter.
My own issue was giving concrete proof to Barbaros. Does anything come to mind that could be useful?
Concrete evidence? No. Unfortunately. However, I do have a contact in the city that mentioned the potential of having some of his people check out this tower to get information.
And you trust them?
He was the one that first informed us of the corruption in the first place.
Ah. So this is where we're at. Do you have anything new to add or questions from me?
Once the truce is over, once the battle is over and the tower and Basileus are dealt with, all hostilities will end between the Anarch and the Covenant group.
And the council... Ragna is against this. Very well.
But, should things go poorly with Barbaros, I have a backup plan of sorts. I have curried some favor with Cormac's sire by bringing back the ashes. By the way, he now has a grave in Lincoln.
Does he now?
Indeed. But I can talk to I can talk to him and try to convince him to talk Ambrose into being more accepting of this alliance. Ambrose is convinced it's a trap.
With sway from Cormac's sire.
That is the only other option I have, barring trying to talk to Ambrose myself, and as said before, I am not good with talking politics.
It certainly is a start. Hmm.
And apparently, with all the information we've garnered, we've gotten, well, at least I've gotten, some amount of attention. As has Judith. One of Basileus's underlings, Damien, tried to kill her. Well, this individual is notably in a grave now. But there were also some people snooping around my house in London, trying to gather information. I believe it is connected.
Then we are being watched.
Most likely, yes.
Have you noticed any within York?
No, but I have not been staying in the castles where the majority of the eyes are in the city for my... Outside of that, no, there have been no operatives poking around the room of my inn as far as I'm concerned. My room at the inn, yes. That.
Very well. August does not give us much time.
Indeed. I should likely deliver word to my contact that him delivering the message is likely unnecessary since you, by sheer happenstance, ended up turning up in this city.
If only I had more headway. Shall I give my hand at trying to achieve something here?
You can certainly attempt. I wish you luck in trying to convince someone to... Well, trying to convince Ragnar, anyone really, to try to convince her that it would be in her best interest, but... As stated before, I do have a backup plan. And should things go poorly here, you can always deliver information back that Barbaros could very well get his ship back.
Yes. Though he is a vengeful one.
I understand that. But his hatred for Ragnar could very well outweigh his hatred for the Anarch. I still believe he is weak-minded and undeserving of the title that he has. But if we are to deal with the problem, we need that extra vote.
Yes. Well, he certainly is abrasive. Where do you intend to head next?
I am going to...
Do be careful around the prince there.
I intend to. I am going more to speak with Sir Hugh. To see if he can sway Ambrose's opinion, as mentioned before.
Yes. I only mention that because the prince has stolen my companion and it caused my estate to fall into ruin.
That is most unfortunate. As a reminder, which princes were the ones that voted against? I know it was Ambrose, Ragna, and there was another one.
Sebastian voted against peace with the Anarchs.
Okay. At the very least, I won't be actively going against her. She is not one of the ones who voted against peace with the Anarch.
That is good to know.
You already know about Ambrose and Ragna. The third that voted against it was Sebastian, the person in whom the tower resides. Well, the person in whom city the tower resides.
Then it sounds like our plans are set in stone.
These are the last options we have for convincing them that I can notably see at the moment.
Very well. Wish you fortune in your endeavors, and I shall not keep you longer in your preparations.
And luck to you as well. Convincing either Ragna or Barbaros is going to need it.
I feel I will need more than luck, certainly.
Did you find anything notable on your endeavor?
Out of character, I'm trying to remember if Octavia told him anything important.
In regards to what specifically?
Basileus, if that name was even mentioned. May not have.
I believe he was, because didn't you speak to... Yeah, you spoke to Octavia with Nicholas and asked about this, didn't you?
Yes.
As I recall, she mentioned that this Tower of Talons and Norwick itself seemed impervious to her otherwise quite significant abilities of sight and supernatural sense, as she is otherwise able to kind of project her senses very far to many places and people. Norwick is one place which is quite restricted to her somehow.
Robert will relay this of concerns that the prince certainly seems to have some sort of sorcery or ward that seems to be working in his favor.
That is troubling.
I only hope your agents were able to maneuver in this hostile environment.
I hope so as well. Either way, I have more information to give my contact.
Until next we meet, then. Robert will stand up and begin heading towards the door to escort Elined out.
Ned will get... Yes.
Alright, you stand up from the cheap wooden barrels that you were sitting on, and Robert escorts you out of the room, back into the inn, and off you go. And go ahead.
From there, she will likely go to an alleyway and use the first dot of obtenebration to move about the shadows to help her be a sneaky snake.
Okay. And the scene will fade on Elined kind of looking around this way and that as she ducks into the shadows which move around her and help to cloak her passage. And on that, the scene will fade, and we will take our break. And we'll be back in 15 minutes. Alright, so the remainder of this session, in the absence of a Judith or a Nicholas, will be pretty focused on Elined and Robert, at least to an extent, because Nicholas is still in Lincoln, so some time stuff has to happen. So I will let you go to Lincoln, but I only really for the express talking of Sir Hugh. Unless Nicholas decides to murder Hugh, in which case we have to reconcile that. I don't think that's going to happen. And Robert, your plan is to stay in York and get a feel for the city and its reception of you and speak to Ragna?
Yeah, he'll see how things are at court, and he'll follow the advice of Tridian that there's someone that would probably talk to him here.
All right.
Is that the gist of what he said?
Yes.
Yeah.
He definitely minced words quite a bit to get that far. All right. We will begin with Elined, as you make your way to Lincoln.
First, she sneaked her way into an alleyway so she could try to go to that location she met Rothschild at and give him the up.
Okay. Was there anything besides updating Rothschild about not needing to send a courier to Barbaros? Anything else?
Not needing to send a courier to Barbaros and giving him Robert's description should he find any information that seems prudent to the investigation, since Robert's going to be here for a while at least.
Okay. That's easily enough done. Takes some time, but for ease of storytelling, we'll say that you are able to relay that to him, at least after some amount of time, before you depart for Lincoln.
I pushed the wrong button. Anyways, what also needs to get relayed that I just remembered is the fact that Octavia cannot look inside said tower that this Basileus supposedly resides.
Yeah, I figured that's what you were telling Rothschild about.
Okay. I was just clarifying.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It's only about 60-70 miles south to Lincoln from York. So, a few days. We're going to say it's still mid-June when you arrive in Lincoln. And your goal is to speak with Sir Hugh. So upon return to the city, I'm assuming you are going through the motions of presenting to Prince Everly and such?
As would be considered standard for visiting, yes.
Okay. So it is at court during presentation that you see Sir Hugh again, and after the presentation is done, Everly seems quite ready to be on with her business and departs from the Tower of Lincoln quite quickly. And you get a warm and placid smile from Sir Hugh de Balsam. It looks like
Is
he's
anyone
about to...
else there?
There's a number of guards standing nearby. There's a small retinue that follows Everly. They're quickly vanishing out the hallway, following behind her entourage. A few scant neonates here and there, here to catch a glimpse of the Gauntlet Lord. It looks like, unless you approach Sir Hugh, he simply offers his smile and warmth and then means to leave.
She will approach him.
He stops as a couple neonates pass by and looks past them to you and smiles again. Good evening.
I was meaning to have a word with you.
Of course. And he kind of steps away, leading you off from the court.
She will follow.
He brings you to kind of a hallway that circles around court. up a few stone steps. I assume the business that you speak of is quite precious. It seems to be a habit. He smiles again.
It indeed is.
What is on your mind, child?
There is a potential for allying with the Anarchs against a potentially more dangerous threat.
I see.
The problem is, the princes are at a stalemate. Half are for, half are against. Barring Barbaros considering the current tensions.
The limitations of an oligarchy.
Indeed. Ambrose is one of those against. I am uncertain now as how to convince him it isn't a trap.
He chuckles faintly. Few decades, of course. That time spent in court seems to have done nothing good to his paranoia.
Indeed, but it is this greater threat that brought the likes of the now blood-hunted and often in Tet into the Covenant.
I see. And this greater threat, does it have a name?
It does, yes, but it seems anyone who discovers his name has people poking around after.
Well, I have friends in many places. Should I need a place to hide, I am sure to find one.
Very well. The greater threat is an individual by the name of Basileus.
I've not heard of this. Do you wish for me to do what now?
I do not think I will make much headway in convincing Ambrose. I wanted to see if you could try.
Ah. Convince dear Ambrose that this Basileus is the greater threat, enough so to...
Or rather, that the alliance the Anarchs are proposing isn't initially a
I see. Peace
She
to
will-
address Basileus.
She will fill him in on the necessary information, barring the more classified topics, of course.
So no mention of Sebastian.
No mention of Sebastian.
But you do tell him about the Tower of Talons in Norwich.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Dark times indeed. You truly think that this is such a great danger that even Ambrose must be convinced of it?
It is part of what the former gauntlet was investigating before their demise.
If this is what you would use your favor for, I would do this.
Indeed, it is what I intend to use it for. I had hoped to convince Ragnar myself, but that plan seemed to have failed.
He may not look it, but Ambrose is perhaps one of the most human of all of us. Some would view him a tyrant. He has his moments of darkness and vengeance. But I have known him long enough to know that he will see reason if he can see past his own paranoia and fear. He is not reasonable as those have made him out. I think he will listen to me.
I thank you.
He bows his head faintly. Was there anything else, child?
No, I don't believe so.
Very well. This Basileus is as powerful as you say. I'd be very careful. I have known dangers of this size during my time on this world. Best to act with greatest caution.
As clarification, part of the information that was transferred also dealt with what little she had on the demise of Jean Marc.
So you told him about Jean-Marc dying to an Irish Cainite that was brought in somehow?
An Irish Cainite from beyond the Pale that was brought in by the... smuggled in by the underlings of this Basileus.
Does Elined know about the Welshman Owain Glyndwr?
She knows that there's a Welshman that confirmed it to Judith, but she does not know the identity of the Welsh.
Okay, that sounds familiar. Thank you. It has been a very long time since anyone has engaged those of our kind in the ire. They are a different breed, I am to understand. Only the Welsh had even faint contact with them. Very isolationist.
Yes, that report was confirmed by a Welsh Cainite. The identity, I am uncertain. It was information transferred to me through a Anarch diplomat during these peace talks.
I see. I think it most strange that the Irish would involve themselves at all. Even to speak with them with the wrong Gaelic could be considered very insulting to some of these older ones.
I do not know why they would be involved. I can make some educated guesses, but nothing with any definite proof behind it.
As a whole, I've always known the Irish to be very spiritual. Those beyond the pale and those within. The old ways are followed out there, in the beyond. The old gods, those the Christians would call pagan. Perhaps they are driven by some spirituality.
Perhaps.
Can think of little else that would bring them out from isolation. For your sake, let us hope that they remain now, back to their isolation. Some creatures are best left on their own.
I certainly hope they remain there as well. There are enough things to deal with as it is at the moment.
If that is all, my child, I will see about speaking to Ambrose.
Yes. Yes, it is.
He offers another smile and then continues on further up the staircase, further into the hallway and out of sight.
Then she will make her travel arrangements and visit Cormac's grave. Since she has the time to do so while she's waiting for said day of travel to come about.
Alright, and at this point in time, you're somewhere in mid-June. Nicholas is also in Lincoln during this time, although back in the beginning of June, and still has to reconcile some things with his timeline. So, you may not be completely done with Lincoln. But for now,
That's fine.
This scene will end, and we will check in with Robert. Who remains in York. Robert, after the night you meet Elined, it is not very long before you are moving through the streets of York and catch a familiar sight. You see Dorothy in a very dark gray cloak, although much of her done-up hair is visible from under the hood. She smiles excitedly, her eyes brighten at the sight of you, and her pace quickens as she moves to join you. Oh, Robert, I'm so glad you've come. I'd begun to worry. It has been so long.
That it has.
She embraces you.
Howard will return the embrace. I am most relieved to see that you are well.
Yes. There's much to discuss. She kind of looks around to her left and her right. Come with me.
Robert will nod and heighten his senses as he looks around, following her.
Alright, and it does seem like she's being a bit secretive, moving quickly but not in an outright run. And certainly walking with a purpose. You know, her arm is hooked around yours as though you're escorting her, but it's quite obvious that she's leading you somewhere. You make your way into the less wealthy areas of the city of York, and before you know it, you're down an alleyway that's faintly familiar to you, and she seems to say something quietly to herself before opening a door to a building that you're just now remembering was there. An old shack. This all seems quite familiar to you. And ushers you to follow her inside, gestures for you to follow her inside.
Robert will follow her inside.
Alright. Once inside, you begin to remember, again, this is almost like deja vu. You remember following her once before like this, and going down that path, and going into this shack for this meeting with this small group. And so you enter into this small wooden room. There's a circular wooden table in the center. There's hardly anything else. There's a few tables around and some lanterns providing light. There are no windows whatsoever in this room. She lowers her hood as she steps inside and closes the door. She embraces you again. I was so worried. Are you alright?
I've been through much, but I am healthy.
The others are not here, obviously. However, I can go and summon them quickly enough. It should not take very long. They will want to hear your words, and you should hear theirs. Will you wait here?
I certainly can wait here.
She offers a brief smile, nods, and dons her hood again, and she steps out. You'll end up waiting there maybe 30 minutes before the door opens again. Is there anything Robert really does in here? There's not a whole lot in here.
Not a whole lot, huh?
There's a hearth, there's a few crates, there's some untouched food in a corner.
Very basic. You'll kind of just inspect the room and try to figure out where the source of it feeling odd is coming from.
Sure, give me a perception investigation roll. Difficulty 7. Okay, 1 success. The only real thing that you find that's very odd is it finally occurs to you to kind of check under the table, as there's not much else to really look at in here. And you do see what looks like some kind of strange, maybe occult symbol of some kind scrolled into the bottom side, the bottom face of the table.
I'll make a mental note of that being there, but he won't harass it.
Alright. So about half an hour goes by before the door abruptly opens again, and this time led by a couple other familiar faces. You see Viceroy of Nottingham, Anselmus, and you see Randall Penborough, the Tremere you met previously in this room. You can see they're all wearing kind of dark, nondescript, very discreet clothing, most of them wearing hoods and looking very suspicious as they enter. The door closes as they lower their hoods and look about. They see you. Anselmus is first to speak up. Ah, Robert. It is good, to see you again. We thought maybe you got killed.
Not yet. And it is good to see that you, too, are in good health.
Lady Nicolier said there was catching up to do, and indeed there is some news that we should speak of. Perhaps we can do with the pleasantries another time. You see Randall Penborough kind of brush past you, ignoring the etiquette and sitting down to find a seat.
Yes, I trust there is much business. What has transpired?
Much. We have had a contact reach out to us. It's not clear how it was learned of our collective persuasion. However, I have my own suspicions. In any case, we may have an offer from the Anarchs. An offer to change the scale of power here in York.
What are the details of this offer?
It seems they're in some kind of negotiation. Perhaps you might enlighten us as to what that is about, as some time has passed. Were you aware that the Anarchs were suing for peace?
Yes, it has come to my attention that they are. And the council is split in their decision.
He exchanges interested looks with Anselmus and then Dorothy. Have you any inclination if they may lean towards peace or against it?
If select obstacles were dealt with, peace would be an option.
You think it likely?
I think so.
That may not do for us.
Why not?
Because I spoke with one, Elined. She has aims of attacking against the Covenant. Make some kind of decisive strike. Initially, she had planned for other targets. However, when she learned of my particular blood, we propose together an idea. An attack, not to the west, but in the east. Durham. Presently, my regent, the Viceroy, Yves Cavanon, controls the region which they are interested in. A region which would be impervious to their defenses. In fact, they'd never find the Chantry unless I were to help them. With my knowledge, the Anarchs could score critical victory in Durham. The defenses of the Chantry are significant, but surmountable with the correct application of force. This would be at least as significant a victory for them as their previous target, so I'm told. However, this peace weighs in the air over all of us. The loss of Durham would cripple Ragnar significantly, improving the odds of Barbaro's victory over her. Without my regent or her powers, Ragnar would be quite weakened.
Ragna herself is one that was against peace. But to have the attack so close to talks, that would sway things against peace, I believe.
Indeed. I'm not sure when Elined means to attack. Perhaps if these peace talks fail. However, the purpose of this conspiracy here is for the elevation of all against the tyrant, the tyranny of Ragnar. We, each of us, have suffered under our superiors. And Ragnar is at the head of this. If we can weaken her and depose my regent, this would be a significant step forward for our conspiracy.
Noted. Was there anything else?
We were hoping you would have some progress. Last you said that you would attempt to find this mark. The Volknot. Have you found anything to suggest that Ragnar might have this Volknot on her?
Robert briefly thinks back to the servants that ended up meeting their fates.
Yes. As a reminder, because it has been a few sessions, the last you saw through that servant's eyes was a mostly nude Ragna, but for a sash wrapped around her thigh. Her right thigh, I should specify.
And it looked very intentional.
It looked very odd for someone who was otherwise quite nude.
Okay. I have suspicions that she is indeed hiding a symbol. She goes to lengths to conceal a certain part of her body. Robert will describe the thigh in detail. As for seeing the actual symbol, I have not, but this confirms a suspicion that something is there.
It is very odd. Indeed. I cannot say to have ever laid eyes upon my sire's right thigh. It could be. It is something, however. I don't know if you wish to bring the chance of this. If you are wrong, well, it could be your head. The Elined jar will just as soon slay you as her, if they feel they were tricked. Well,
Yes, it is a gamble. And of course, it specifically has to be the symbol.
that is what Wulfric said to me. He nods a couple times. The Elined jar will come for those bearing the Volknot. Deliver a death.
Perhaps in these short nights I can muster something.
Maybe you're a gambling man, huh? He kind of pats you on the shoulder. Who wears a sash over their thigh in any case?
True enough. And how do you plan on getting in contact?
Getting in contact?
Well, to spread news to the Elined jar.
Well, you're the one who saw it. Who thought you would be the one to go speak with them, huh? They won't want to hear it from second hand.
Out of character, was it ever mentioned where you would need to go to spread this information, or who you would need to talk to?
You were told far north. The edge of Scotland.
Okay, noted. I suppose a messenger would not do in this case.
Not unless you wish to have the messenger's head sent back to you, huh?
Very well. Dorothy, has the Duke been around?
No, haven't you heard? He was exiled back to Ireland. Ever since the king regained his senses.
Ireland, you say?
Yes. Posted back to his old post as Lieutenant of Ireland, I believe. Shunted away from London where he might build influence. All of his former appointments have been undone. I am certain that's quite stressful for Ragnar.
Surely she would not let such an important resource escape her. How has her gathering of forces been?
It has been quite steady, I should say, from what I've seen. It appears most of the mercenaries coming through here are off to join the Nevilles, never to congregate in one place. A single large force is alarming, you see.
Understandable.
It seems those forces have grown to a trickle. I suspect she's either run out of men to hire or perhaps run out of funds. It seems even Ragnar may have her own limits.
And do you think funds are of short supply?
Difficult to say. She's very canny with hiding her resources, especially from me.
Who would manage her resources?
Mr. Sharp, undoubtedly. The ghoul.
Robert thinks of... Has he seen a ghoul by this name?
A few times when Ragnar deigns to put on all the pomp and ceremony of her court and bring out her other child, Jesper, and her ghoul who kind of receives guests. You do remember meeting Ethan Sharp. He's apparently an older-looking man. A little short, but well-spoken. Very receiving, very diplomatic. A good Chamberlain.
Yes, I recall Mr. Sharp. So it could be possible Ragnar has stretched herself thin.
It is possible. Although, if I know my sire at all, I'm sure she has multiple contingencies for such things. Regrettable that you could not find more about this symbol, specifically where on her thigh. Perhaps it is enough? She looks at you, uncertain.
I do have the general location. Robert, thinking back on that ghoul, or not ghoul, but a servant. It was that one spot in particular, yes, nothing else.
No, you've seen much more of Ragnar than any living or unliving man has outside the Duke.
It was in Ireland.
It's in Ireland now. What's going through Robert's mind?
He's thinking about making this trip, and everything that implies. He's also thinking of ways to escape if indeed the mark is not there.
Decisions.
But right now he's taking in all the information. He will continue his mission to speak with Ragna to persuade her, but before he does, he'll probably seek to levy something in his favor when he approaches her. He knows that Ragna is motivated by greed in this case, and if she is desperate for funds, maybe he can lure her in to peace talks. But he'll want to confirm that by speaking with Ethan Sharp first.
So what say you, Lord de Vere? And Salmas kind of sits back in his seat.
This information is useful. And I dare say a trip up north could be called for.
Ha ha ha, what did I tell you? I knew we picked the right gauntlet, Lord. He looks over towards Randall, who looks just as serious as he entered.
But of course.
I do hope you'll be careful if you go north. Those Danes, I hear they live without the silence. They give no concern for it that far north.
Do they now?
Savages, all of them. I'm certain. Just be prepared to leave if things do not go the way you think.
Noted. Thank you for the warning.
She nods a couple times, looking worried.
Was there anything else that we need to discuss?
Seems to me the most pressing matter is whether or not the attack on Durham will occur. If you should come across any news about a time when these peace talks may fail, you must alert us immediately so that I am prepared to do what I need to do to allow the Anarchs access to the Regent and the Chantry.
I'll see about getting a message out to you. But I still have my business with Ragna here. And if she is swayed towards peace, then that certainly would be the outcome.
And perhaps it is in your interest to not sway her to peace. He raises an eyebrow, looking to you knowingly. We all stand to gain if Ragnar falls.
And that we do.
As I heard it, she still has a boon over you of some magnitude.
Yes.
I trust you'll make the right decision. And he slowly pushes himself away from the table, stands up and straightens out his cape and cloak, his tunic. I bid you all a safe evening. And best not that we all leave at once. And he'll step over to the doorway and make to leave.
Robert will too bid his farewell and see if Dorothy has a mind of accompanying him.
She nods after waiting a moment and then stands up to join you.
And how has Agna's eyes on you been as of late?
Are you speaking as you leave?
Just before they head out.
I suppose no more or less than ever before. I've never quite noticed a lurking presence, although this Sienna, I've heard, is quite resourceful.
Yes. I suppose there has been no progress in that, their identity.
Unfortunately not. She has a ghost. I fear to ask too openly about it, lest I invite more suspicion.
Yes, that would invite much suspicion.
At times I wondered if Ragnar concocted this legend, Sienna the Virgin, the never-before-seen spy master, never to be seen, because she doesn't exist. Certainly someone must have seen her by now.
That is a possibility. Something to keep the mind open to. For now, let us just enjoy each other's company this night.
You look more relaxed than you have in the past, more at peace. It's pleasing to see. I was beginning to worry that you were beginning to lose yourself to the beast.
You've noticed, have you? Yes. I am much more at peace these present nights. Unresolved issues have been taken care of.
Well then perhaps before you rejoin my sire and have these talks, perhaps we can have some fun. Like the old nights.
We do have time for it.
Oh good. There are some servants who you'll absolutely adore.
Robert will give her a grin.
As she returns the grin, leading you away from the poor district and back to the fine establishment, the finery and luxury of Castle York and its many well-appointed rooms. And the two of you have a very refreshing and energizing night, feeding together on the kind servants in a kind of orgy of blood and sex. And I think that is where we will close the scene for Robert for now. And close the session, since we're about half an hour out. And we're missing half of our player characters. So we'll continue on in the next session and catch up with some other player characters. So we'll pick it up again next week.